Although living next to a celebrity may sound cool, sometimes it's not the most pleasant experience. Sure, you can brag to your friends about living next to an A-lister, but when celebrity life comes spilling over your side of the fence, you might rethink your living situation. There are apparently a lot of celebrities who aren't the friendliest on the block, so let's talk about some of them as we count down the top 10 celebrities who are rude to their neighbors. At number 10, Jake Paul. Once upon a time, Jake Paul was a Disney star. It's easy to forget he was once on the Disney Channel because he's now focused on harassing boxers, but yeah, he did have a brief career on the network. Back in 2017, he was one of the stars of the Disney Channel show Bizaardvark, and though he and Disney got a lot of success out of the show, things ended on a sour note as too much bad press ended up with Jake losing his job. Around this time, Jake was often in the news being slammed and criticized for his stunts and constant filming because of his Team 10 mates, and he had been causing quite a number of disturbances in his residential area. Jake and the Team 10 crew were lighting backyards on fire and causing a lot of ruckus to the point where Jake's neighbors started issuing complaints about the noise and destruction going on in the area. Jake's neighbors had police issuing warnings and fines for all sorts of things, and whenever Jake would get in trouble, the media reported on it, and it all got back to Disney. Jake ended up losing his job all because of the trouble he was causing, and honestly, the neighbors couldn't care less. To them, he got what he deserved, and when he finally moved out of the area, they were thrilled. I couldn't imagine living next to the Team 10 house with all of the fans coming around and the constant noise. Jake surely was not very hospitable then. At number 9, Catherine Zeta-Jones. I did a series of videos exposing mean celebrities, and one of the people I exposed was Catherine Zeta-Jones. I've talked about how she's known to be mean and dismissive towards fans, but those aren't the only people to be rubbed the wrong way by the actress. Some neighbors have exposed the actress for being pretty rude. One person even shared a story about how Catherine went on a vacation and was renting a condo for a short time while visiting a different city, and she specifically demanded that the other tenants in the building be banned from using the building's gym while she was staying there. As one would expect, this did not go over well with other tenants. No one wants to be told that they can't use the facilities that they pay to enjoy. Those tenants said that she acted very entitled, and none of them were fans of hers from that moment on. If you find out that you'll be living near Catherine Zeta-Jones, I would advise that you find another place to stay. Now, before I carry on with the list, I'd like to ask you guys to consider leaving a like on this video if you're enjoying it so far, and also head on over to my gaming channel Viper Girl if you're looking for some new fun gaming content to enjoy, and subscribe while you're there. At number 8, Justin Bieber. I think we are all aware of Justin Bieber's destructive phase, right? Around 2014, Justin was constantly in the news for getting into fights, getting into trouble, and just really going a bit off the rails. A lot of people were complaining about Justin's behavior, including his neighbors. One of the biggest scandals that Justin was involved in during that time came about after he reportedly caused over $20,000 worth of damage to his neighbor's house. Neighbors accused the singer and his friends of egging their multi-million-dollar mansion, and they were furious as anyone would be. This was all taken to court where Justin pleaded no contest to the misdemeanor charge, and he got away with not facing a criminal charge in the case. Justin also paid $80,000 to his neighbor in restitution. Things died down a bit between him and his neighbor until 2016, when the neighbor reclassified his lawsuit against the singer, claiming that, quote, things got nasty between them. He said that Justin was a bully, and according to the neighbor, he had been, quote, spitting at, punching, and bullying other members of the public with impunity for years. I'm sure that nowadays Justin is a little nicer to his neighbors, but back then he was really rude. At number 7, Chris Brown. Chris Brown has certainly had his fair share of conflicts, from fighting workers at a gym to having outbursts on various sets, and even his 2009 Rihanna incident, but there's another category of people that the singer has also offended, and those are his neighbors. In 2016, the singer had a day-long standoff with SWAT. This all came about after a woman alleged that Chris had threatened her with a firearm. The woman was able to get away, but eventually the police were called about the incident, but Chris refused to let the police in his home without a warrant, so they set up camp, and that's when SWAT moved in. There were helicopters flying overhead, and the singer even allegedly threw a duffel bag full of firearms and illicit substances out the window. The standoff lasted for hours and had neighbors in the area upset with Chris for causing such a scene. He was eventually arrested, but if you think his problems with his neighbors were over, think again. Chris also faced complaints from neighbors after reportedly driving his ATV around the neighborhood recklessly and doing donuts in the street. If you're thinking about becoming the singer's neighbor, just don't. At number 6, Drake. Drake may be Canadian, but he surely doesn't have that polite Canadian energy. Drake once made enemies with his neighbors in Hidden Hills, California, when they started making noise complaints in response to the rapper's loud and extravagant parties. According to those in the neighborhood, Drake's parties would often go until very early in the morning, causing many of them to lose sleep. After receiving one-too-many noise complaints, Drake took action, but not in a way that anyone was expecting. Instead of dialing back the parties and being more respectful of the noise level in the neighborhood, Drake decided that flexing was the best solution, so he bought the house next door. He spent $2.8 million to simply expand his land so that those in the immediate vicinity wouldn't have to deal with his mess. He didn't want to be accountable to anyone, so he just bought his way out of the problem. I mean, that is one easy way of handling things, but I'm sure it would have been cheaper to just turn the music down. At number 5, Charlie Sheen. Actor Charlie Sheen had such a dramatic run-in with his neighbor that a lawsuit was filed over it. Charlie's show 2.5 Men was still pretty big at the time of his neighbor drama. Having had 12 seasons from 2003 to 2015, it was one of the biggest and most successful sitcoms on TV, and sometimes success brings drama. Back in 2006, 3 years into the show's run, Charlie Sheen was sued by his neighbor, a woman by the name of Ursula Auburn. She claimed that one of the characters in the show was based on her, and she was really offended by it. In her lawsuit against Charlie, she had claimed that, quote, the wacky neighbor and female stalker Rose was based on her because the character shares similarities to the way Ursula spoke, looked, and dressed in real life. Imagine being exposed like that on TV, seeing what your neighbor thinks of you while watching a dramatic version of yourself on a sitcom. As a result of all this, Ursula tried suing Charlie for, quote, no less than $1 million. The suit eventually settled out of court, and no one really knows if Charlie really did base the character off his neighbor, but it certainly made her upset. At number 4, Taylor Swift. Even though she's known for being pretty nice to people, apparently she's still managed to anger her neighbors. Really, you can't please everyone, but in this case, Taylor's actions caused a major inconvenience to the people around her. In 2013, Taylor made her neighbors pretty upset when she made some additions to her Rhode Island home. Taylor was looking to build a huge wall around her property, but to do that, she needed to have some coastline rocks moved out of the way. This disturbed the surrounding area, and neighbors weren't happy. Taylor's representative said that the movement of the rocks wasn't her choice, but that it was the government who asked her to move the rocks that had drifted into the ocean back to her property line. This was a lot of land disturbance just to build a big wall. Neighbors were not happy about the wall itself because they said that it had taken away the public access that they had enjoyed for years. I think it's safe to say that Taylor had an unpleasant welcome to the neighborhood. At number 3, Machine Gun Kelly. It seems like Machine Gun Kelly isn't just loud on stage, but also at home. You would think that he would put that loud rocker persona to rest while at home in his free time, but according to his neighbors, that couldn't be further from the truth. His neighbors have said that he's been known to host loud and crazy parties, disturbing much of his community, and he's also known to have joyrides with his friends on the block. Neighbors have also complained about loud motorcycles revving their engines at inappropriate times of the night, and he and his guests have spilled over into neighboring properties from time to time. It's also been reported that during parties, Kelly's guests have parked in neighbors' driveways and have blocked in many of the neighbors' cars as well. It seems as though he doesn't really have a sense of respect for other people's properties or quiet hours. At number 2, Natasha Lyonne. Orange is the New Black star Natasha Lyonne is certainly a nasty neighbor. She once had a serious altercation with one of her neighbors that she actually faced criminal charges for. In 2005, there was a warrant out for Natasha's arrest after she confronted her neighbor in a fit of rage. According to sources, Natasha banged on her neighbor's door, stormed into the apartment, and even ripped a mirror off the wall. The actress also allegedly told her neighbor that she was going to hurt her dog. Because of her actions, Natasha was hunted down by authorities and charged with criminal mischief, harassment, and trespassing. Luckily for her, those charges were eventually dropped, but she was ordered to pay her neighbor $2,000 in restitution. Reading about what that neighbor went through, I would have hated to have lived in that area too. Now, I'm not sure what brought on Natasha's fit of rage, but it had to have been something really intense to result in her causing so much damage to her neighbor's property. And finally, number 1, Ivanka Trump. Even the president's daughter can cause some terror in her community. Being high-profile people, you're bound to cause a scene wherever you go, and Ivanka Trump's neighbors had to learn this the hard way. Shortly after Ivanka and her husband moved to their new home after her father was elected into office, Ivanka's neighbors were already starting to complain. Because of her relationship relationship to the then President of the United States, she and her family always had security in close proximity, and this caused a disturbance in the neighborhood because of how many people were following the family at every waking moment. According to neighbors, even having a walk in the park was a grand affair because there were cars constantly following Ivanka's every move. But it's not just the disturbance caused by security that rubbed people the wrong way. Neighbors also complained about Ivanka's trash, saying that she always missed the neighborhood garbage day and that her trash was constantly stinking up the street. She wasn't very considerate to her neighbors, and they surely hated her for it. Now, I want you guys to tell me if you've ever had a horrible neighbor. I'm sure we've all lived near some crazy Karens or have called in some noise complaints, so tell me about your experiences down in the comments. Anyways, that's been our list. I've been your host, Brie Room, and until next time, stay safe, remember to drink some water today, and stay groovy, friends. Bye! According to those in the neighborhood, Drake's parties would often go until the very early... Jesus Christ, Bobby. No, stop it.